Okay, magandang araw po, gabi, hapon, whatever time you are going to tune in or tuned in now. Si Mentong po to with Madam Ana Rosario Malindog-Uy. And the kaado will be late, mga 1 hour late, and we have many things to talk about. But there is a good news, at least today, Ana, the COVID-19 cases is just around
Yes,
over 6,000, di ba? Over 6,000, am I correct?
6,414 po.
Yeah. So parang this may be a beginning of a decline again. And so we'll talk about that a bit later. And while we wait for our other friends. No? And let me see, dun sa YouTube, we're also, well, Evelyn Abuhar is already with us from Japan. Good evening po, Mentong and Kaado and Kaana. Yes,
Good
good evening.
evening.
Good evening there in Yokohama. I think
Wow,
Yokohama is in the Tanigawa Prefecture ba yun?
sa
My,
Japan.
yeah, my son is also there teaching English sa
Ah,
school children. And well, they have no emergency situation anymore sa COVID-19. Na-lift na yung emergency. So that's good news there. We have prepared a lot of things. Kaana, you have been able to review some of them, no?
opo,
Uh,
nakita ko po yung ano.
yeah,
Oo.
as usual, we have some appetizers, no? But we are also now joined in by G. Agustin and Antonio Miguel Carlos, early comers, and I think, Kaana, we should uh, prepare every Wednesday some gifts for our early comers,
Yes. Oo.
yung virgin
At
coconut oil products. I'll show you one. I don't
uh,
know if I have it here right now. Baka nalipat ko. Yung nasal
I
spray,
have one.
you have, no? Because
Ah,
yung nasal spray, meron ka? Di ba? I think
meron
it's
po.
part of the
Opo.
package. O kasi importante yun eh. Yun eh. Ini-spray ko before I go out. Kasi kung makasagap ka ng COVID through the nose, it will first go into the nostril, into the linings of the nose. Kung may virgin coconut oil doon, napapatay na ng virgin coconut oil.
Opo.
And this is proven, no, scientifically. So maybe we can send them if they're
Yes, oo.
gluten-free.
Yung first 5
Uh,
or first 10,
that's right.
ganyan.
Si
Opo.
Bederio Candido Joselito is with us also now. And then let me check. Si Nelly Valenzuela has come in po. No? Good evening po, Kamentong at Kaana. Aga po ako makasubaybay ngayon. No? And may comment na si Evelyn, ito na ba po ang inyong regular time? Kasi po, I used to watch your live talk in the afternoon po. Well, this is 6 o'clock, more, it's now 6:10 dito sa Pilipinas. You're watching from Yokohama, you are 1 hour ahead of us. 7 o'clock sila at this time. And then there's a sweet potato trucker. Hi po sa inyo. Sweet potato, that is, well, I eat regularly. That's my only carbo these days. Yung kamoteng orange. Yung kamoteng orange sa kulay, are you familiar with that?
Opo.
Ana?
Kumakain din kami dyan.
Yeah,
Tsaka masarap siya.
that is very healthy. Yung orange color niya is parang beta-carotene. And yan po ang pinapakain ng mga Chino sa mga may sakit, may flu, may lagnat, na nagpapahinga, nagre-recover, nilalagay yan sa lugaw. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, Ana?
Oo,
No?
sa probinsya po, sa amin, sa province. Oo.
So, yun,
Naglulugaw tapos nilalagyan ng parang ano siya, para siyang nangyayari, naging ulam siya.
also, but it's healthier than rice. It's healthier than rice, actually, the mga root crops. Si Romel Desana has joined us. Good evening daw to Kaana and of course to me. Si sabi ni Abuhar, Evelyn, kamentong bagay na bagay po sa inyo ang kulay, green na kulay. Okay. Well, I can wear the green now because hindi po ako gumagamit ng green screen. Yung sa background para ma-projectan ng ibang mga background. Kasi kung naka-green ako at may green screen sa likod, mawawala ang katawan ko, ulo lang lulutang sa atin. The rain cloud is with us, greeting us here, and we greet back to you, rain cloud. And sa London pala, sa sweet potato trucker. Ang ganda naman ang pangalan niya, sweet potato trucker. Baka nagmamaneho siya ng truck, delivery trucker kasi. Nasa London daw siya. Okay. And si Deng Dizon, good evening from Pampanga. Good evening to all of you. So Kaana, we can start. But do you have any kwento today and the past 2 days, 3 days, before we go on to the formal subject matter?
So far naman sa akin po, buhay ECQ, buhay bahay lang, buhay pamilya. Pag hindi nakakalabas, ang ano ko lang sa mga kids ko, kasi I have 4 and 5 years old, no? Yung mga bata, nagiging restless. So yung part ng mommy to actually take care of them and play with them, kailangan talagang mataas ang requirement. So I asked my husband to join me and help me out. I'm just lucky that my husband is very supportive and para yung co-parenting po, it's very important, I think, nowadays na, yung co-parenting na husband and wives has to take care of their children together, yung parang division ng labor when it comes to kids. Like ako, ang in charge ako is mag-cook, luto and all, but my husband is in charge of, like for example, magtututbrush sa kanila, papaliguan sila, and all that. So, that's my life right now since ECQ. Less ang labas kasi nga ayoko rin, natatakot akong lumabas kung hindi necessary or essential. So, as much as possible, I stay at home, I do my work through internet, and lahat ng transactions internet muna for a while. But I'm not really, hindi rin ako sad or depressed, no, not necessarily. It's just that dahil ngayong mga bata, yung space nila para maglaro is dun lang sa house nyo, mas mataas ang level na kailangan sa akin para maka-cope up sa kanila kasi ang energy nila sobrang high. Ang energy ko mataas na yan, pero nauubusan pa ako. Opo, ganun lang po ngayong week na to yung life so far. But of course, I do research, I read many articles all at the same time. That's the usual thing naman for me. Opo.
Ako naman, yung isang apo ko, daily communication kami, kapitbahay namin. So, nadadalang ko kung ano mga kailangan nila. Ang request ngayong hapon, batteries. A3, A2 batteries. So, tumuro na, sabi ko kasi may programa tayo ngayon. And bati tayo kay Narj Tuling has joined us. I know have a wonderful and fruitful discussion ahead. And we'll also take our cue from you, Narj. From Johnny Ferreras, magandang gabi po, ka Mentong at ka Ana. Anthony Sumagi, hello. Prof, good PM po. Profesora, Professor siguro. Well, Alfred Ang, mabuhay po. Mentong and Sis Ana, condemning anti-Asian hate without condemning anti-China imperialist propaganda is supporting anti-Asian hate. Okay, and andito ang dami ng dumalo. Astro Ayumi is with us now. Sweet Potato Trucker is a regular listener, sabi niya. Feast 4D, buy Bitcoin daw. I don't know. Someday we'll discuss Bitcoin. I have my analysis of that.
Oo.
Ikaw ba?
Yung Bitcoin pala. Medyo curious din po ako sa Bitcoin kasi ang dami po talagang nagre-request, friend request sa akin from mga Pilipino at saka iba-ibang foreigners po na they're trying to ask me to be part of Bitcoin. Kasi ang dami nila. Tapos pumapasok sila sa wall ko para lang mag-invite ng people. Sabi ko, ano ba talaga itong Bitcoin na to? Hindi ko pa po yan na iintindihan masyado.
Someday, one day we will focus on that kasi ako, ang Bitcoin from $1 in 2011, now it's cost, I don't know the latest figures, but it has gone up to $50,000, $60,000. bumabagsak to $25,000, $30,000. But I think it's ultimately a bubble because how do you create a Bitcoin? They create it by mining it from computers. So kuryente lang ang investment dyan. So mahaba yan. No? We will not spend
Yes,
too
yes.
much time on it tonight, but we will schedule it. Maybe next week. At least half an hour on Bitcoin.
O para maintindihan ng mga tao po. Kasi kahit yung ibang friends ko sa FB, they are also penetrating them by inviting them to be part of yung Bitcoin nga po. Sabi ko, ano ba to? Scam ba to? Totoo ba to? So hindi ko siya masyadong napag-aralan or hindi ko pa masyadong maintindihan po yung Bitcoin na yan.
Well, maraming elemento dyan. Ako, ang tingin ko, it's a big bubble. Babagsak yan to zero someday. It doesn't mean it's a scam. It's just that it goes against the natural nature and character of money. It tries to eliminate the human factor. Parang yung election natin, makinarya lang, computer lang, because man is not reliable daw. But machines are not reliable. Basically algorithm on Bitcoin. But it will get more and more complicated as we explain it. So we'll postpone that and schedule talagang.
Yeah, in another.
It's now, finish ni Ka Joshua sa screen ko, $57,562 per Bitcoin ngayon. From $1 in 2011. Pero bumabagsak yan ng bagsak ng $10,000, $20,000, biglang tataas na naman. Pero hype talaga ang nag-drive niyan. Nag-drive kasi natutulak niyan, that's what I mean. Dahil wala pa talagang practical purpose for any big population. Very useful for those who are transacting illegal values. Because hindi dumadaan sa gobyerno yan, hindi dumadaan sa central banks, hindi dumadaan sa bangko. Peer-to-peer ang tawag na, diretsahan sa tao. Through a computer algorithm, and so on. So, mahabang kwento. Kailangan tigilan ko na, kundi hindi na natin mati-discuss yung iba mga issue.
Opo, i-reschedule natin yan.
And Julie Mirano is with us, Chef Mali is with us, Mahal Likhain is now with us, Emilia Rama is with us, watching from Daman, Saudi Arabia. Si Mahal Likhain, sabi niya, blockchain technology po ang cryptocurrency. Traditional investing in stocks and mutual funds is preferred and safer than Bitcoin. So very complex. But again, pagka napasok tayo dyan, 2 hours will not be enough to discuss it. Okay, and then huling pasada na dito sa mga pumasok po dito sa kabila, si Anthony Sumagi has joined us, Johnny Herreras, and Alfred Ang. Sabi ni Alfred, nabasa na natin yung message. Okay, our first topic, just for the a little appetizer, but I may have discussed this already, but it's very recent news. It's April 3, April 7 pa rin tayo today. So this is just 4 days ago. Walang pahinga po yung mga communist terrorists sa atin, trabaho sila ng trabaho para ma-destabilize ang gobyerno. Here in this case, nahuli ang kanilang dalawang motorsiklong may daladalang explosives and food supplies for New People's Army on March 31 in Barangay Poblacion, Santiago, Abusan del Norte. Now, analyze this news, for example, Ana, and this is also parang training doon sa audience natin to how to analyze. Sabi ng headline, NPA bomb attack. But I doubt that this is an attack. This is just a delivery. Ba't ko nasabi yan?
Yes.
Ikaw, can you see that? Why?
I mean, yung pictures po nakikita naman natin eh. The picture itself will speak na hindi siya bomb. Ang headline ho is bomb attack, no? I think it's much more na-intercept nila ang supposedly delivery at saka dun sa delivery nandun yung food supply at saka nandun din yung mga ammunitions whatsoever.
may bomba rin.
Kasi feeling ko mayroon din yung intelligence na nakuha ang ating
Siyempre, may
army. Oo, kasi may intel yan. So, hindi siya bomb attack per se.
That's
Pero
right. You're correct.
oo.
Kasi kung bomb attack yan, suicide na yan, nakabisikleta unless iiwan nilang bisikleta. But NPAs are not known for suicide attacks,
No.
Kung mag-a-attack sila, hindi sila magdadala ng pagkain doon sa package or doon sa bundle na yon. So delivery yan ng food at ng bomba at ammunition and so on. So,
I even doubt, ang sa akin yan, nung nakita ko po yan, nung una, tinignan ko, I am not sure even if yung nagde-deliver are member of the NPA or not. Oo, that's even my Pero what I'm saying is, still at the end of the day, kung hindi man yan NPAs or ginamit pa rin sila, which is not good. No? Pero kung NPA man yan, ibig sabihin na-intercept talaga sila on the way. Kasi for sure, the community, I think, or may intelligence na na trabaho na ginawa ang ating armed forces.
Yeah.
Mas ganun pa yung
Our second item is ERAP na as of yesterday was on the ventilator as pneumonia due to COVID-19 worsened. So may pneumonia na nagsimula daw sa COVID-19. But this afternoon, nag-check na ulit tayo ng balita at sa Facebook may mga nagpadala sa akin. Sabi daw ni Jinggoy, stable na naman daw si
stable na daw si
ERAP. Although yung sinabing stable, hindi naman sinabi doon sa nabasa ko, ewan kung meron sa iba, kung siya ay tinanggal na sa ventilator, parang hindi pa, no?
Hindi pa ata po. Parang yun ang basa ko doon sa nabasa ko na nilagay, I think, nila sa News 5. Oo, doon yun yung nakita ko eh. Pero one thing, tinawagan siya ni PRRD. Kaya natuwa si former Senator Jinggoy Estrada kasi kinumusta siya na magpagaling siya. Nabasa ko naman din yun. Tumawag ang presidente sa dating presidente. So parang ganun.
So that's good
Pero
news.
sana gumaling po siya. Sana gumaling na po siya.
Of course, 82 years old, no? 82. Well, I was I helped Estrada era for 10 years, from 2001 to 2010. Not during his time as president, but during his time as a detainee. Nung nakakulong na siya, saka ako siya nakakausap kasi nung last days na niya sa Malacanang, last year, 2020, kailan ba? 1999, 2000, ganyan. Nung kinukudeta na siya, doon ako naging active sa aking column supporting him dahil ang logic ko, lalong lalala ang Pilipinas pag siya ay bumagsak due to a kudeta. And I think I wasn't wrong because when Gloria Arroyo took over, ano nangyari? Napasa ang EPIRA, Electric Power Industry Reform Act. Corruption became worse. Why do I say that? In one simple story, masasabi ko that corruption, it's good evidence that corruption got worse. Remember Angelo Reyes? You may be too young to remember.
No, I remember him po.
Nag-suicide daw siya. Pero kasi walang 100% certainty that he did.
Pero yun yung news.
Yun ang news. May bangkay naman, etc. Pero hindi binuksan. At saka hindi walang autopsy. Kaya 0.01% suspicion na peke lahat yun at he ran off with the money. Hindi na ni-retrieve yung 50 million na inamin niya na parang pabaon sa kanya and other funds pa. But the fact that he committed suicide, PMA graduate, honorable officer, kasi nga nung panahon ni Gloria, talagang binusog ang maraming mga military na tumulong sa kudeta. Whatever the faults of ERAP is, I think the coup d'etat was wrong. Kasi malinaw na yung proseso, you go to election, matatalo naman si ERAP kung talagang masama ang performance niya. So, you were not yet active politically sa
No, I
national.
was na national level, no, because I think I was fresh grad ng time na
You
yon.
were
I
20
think
years old, 19 years old siguro at that
19,
time.
oh,
19.
19 or 20 years old. But I was during the EDSA DOS, kasi EDSA
Mm.
DOS po yun, diba? I was
Mm.
actually hired as a reporter,
Mm.
feature writer, and I was sent dun sa
Mm.
area kung saan parang bumababa na sa ERAP para
Mm.
sasakay na siya doon sa isang bulletproof ata na
Yes.
oo. Oo, nandun ako sa event na yon mismo. I was covering that as a feature writer doon sa isang
Mm.
magazine kasi they want me
Mm.
to be there. I was a fresh grad, 20 years old, 19 years old I think. So I was a bit parang nalungkot ako kasi nakakalungkot po talaga yung itsura ni President Erap Estrada nung time na yon. Nakita ko siya
Mm.
from the time na lumabas siya ng bahay hanggang sumakay siya doon sa car, hanggang sa umalis. Ang daming tao nagkakagulo. Ang dami niyang supporter actually na nandun din. Pero ako, I was there as a commission reporter lang na gusto kong i-observe kung ano nangyayari. So, nandun po ako sa event na yon. Pero I was too young by that time. Hindi pa ako masyadong active sa pag-voice out ng opinion ko. I was a bit, shy and all that. Pero nandun po ako at saka nakakalungkot po yung ano na yun yung moment na yun kasi Yerap was really, really sad. Hindi ko
Well,
alam kung naiiyak siya or something to that effect ng time na yun. Kasi nandun po talaga ako sa bahay mismo kung saan siya nandun at lumabas.
that's a
So, medyo
that's
shock ako doon eh.
that's a good lesson in history for the younger people at yung mga nagdanas po noon at that time na medyo may maturity na, no? Because that's a lesson, no? And it did not improve the country, and the Supreme Court was just spoiled, I would say, because nakasama ang Supreme Court doon sa proseso ng coup d'etat. And they um, they deemed ERAP resigned or removed from office because of inability daw to perform. But there are requirements doon sa pagtanggal ng isang chief executive, ano? And one is resignation. There should be a resignation letter, which ERAP said, I never signed a resignation letter. He was functioning, and ang joke nga noon, apat pang asawa ni ERAP, paano mo sasabing incompetent na, and so on. But anyway, itong na-dig up ni Ka Joshua, medical bulletin of former President Joseph Estrada, his kidney function is improving, his vital organs are functioning well. The family was informed by physicians that his inflammatory markers are down on the downward trend and so on. Wala namang sinabi kung natanggal na sa ventilator or hindi. Kasi talagang mahirap na kung nasa ventilator ng ganyang katagal at tumagal pa. Okay, let's move on to the other topics as it gets more and more serious. Of course, this one is a light item lang, also for interest lang. Si Sara Duterte takes a trip to Singapore for personal health management. No, of course, as usual, when things like this come up, politics comes in and mag-speculation. Bakit sa Singapore pa? Bakit hindi dito? Well, anyway, we will not pry into anything.
Yes,
It's
yes.
just that to mention it. No? May reaction ka ba dyan, Ana?
Oo. Nung una siyang lumabas, nakita ko sa isang friend ko sa Facebook and I was not even see it. Hindi ako parang, that's probably fake news. Pero nung nilabas siya, si Sarah mismong nagsabi kung bakit. Parang sabi ko, it's a personal matter. So hayaan na natin si Madam na gawin ang kanyang personal matter. Total, nagproseso naman po siya ng niya eh. Lahat naman ata ng protocol sinunod at saka nag-leave siya. I mean, official leave naman yan. So, let him be. She is entitled to her privacy as a person, no? Mas ganun pa po ako.
Yeah, I agree. But unfortunately, public figures cannot be like you and me, hidden from public view. Diba?
Of course po.
Pero mabuti so far, wala pang mga speculation tungkol dito.
Wala pa naman po.
Kahit ang opposition sa inyo. Okay, and now the big good news is itong Okta survey group,
Yes.
which is very professional. Although I was very suspicious at the first time I read about Okta. I don't know if that you were provoked also to think, bakit suddenly napaka-prominente itong Okta survey? Ano at yung ilang unang labas nila ay hindi pa sa well, nung ni-research ko, there is an Okta group in Orange County, California. At ang board ay puro mga Amerikano. And sabi ko, bakit yan ganyan? No? I tried to research about it here. Then I found that UP
Yes.
scientists, professors, statisticians, mathematicians are the ones comprising them in this in the Philippines. Hindi ko pa ma-establish kung may contact, may connection dun sa US. No? But so far, given my suspicion or my doubts, they have been able to convince me that they're competent. Ano?
Yes, they are po. Kilala ko po yung isa sa
Sige,
mga,
sige.
opo, so far, hindi ko naman na personal na close friend, no? But I think
May
as
kilala ka?
colleagues, no? Kilala ko yung
Okay.
isa, si Professor
Okay.
Ranjit, I think. Opo. At saka, they're really competent people then. In fairness to them po, they're competent people. They're statisticians, may political science dyan, may iba-ibang discipline po. So,
Okay.
pero yung data, according to Secretary Harry Roque, yung data na ginagamit nila, kinukuha din nila sa DOH. Siguro, ang ano lang doon is depende sa pag-operationalize ng data kasi depende rin yan sa mga ginagamit na, depende sa taong nagbabasa ng data kung ano yung kanyang operational framework or something to that effect. Pero ang composition po niyan ay mga UP professor and UP scientists po na they're very competent naman.
Good. And so it took me a month to watch and assess their competence, and I concluded na like you, they're very competent. Ngayon may kilala ka pala doon, so
Yes po,
that
yan
adds
po.
to my confidence in them. But I would the reason why I'm narrating this is I want our audience to be very careful in accepting so-called survey group, poll groups,
Yeah.
and so on. Try to examine anong background niyan, history niyan before lunukin, no, yung mga
Opo.
lalo na political surveys, di ba?
Ayun yung mahirap. Ito medyo scientific to kasi science talaga to. Yung political survey medyo dapat talaga maging maingat at tignan kung sino may-ari ng survey, sino nagpa-sponsor ng survey. Kasi sometimes survey, it's a mind conditioning tool na ginagamit. Lalo na pag ang pinag-uusapan ay eleksyon at politika.
Yeah. Okay, and so may magandang balita itong araw na to, April 7, galing sa Okta. At sabi nila, new COVID-19 cases between March 31 and April 6 went down, bringing the one-week growth rate to 3%. Bakit magandang balita to? Kahit na it's still growth rate, no? Bumaba yung growth rate kasi this is lower than the previous recorded weekly increase of 19% between March 25 and April 1. So bumababa na ulit yung rate ng infection, yung dami ng bagong kaso, na actually yung mga nauulat ngayon na tested the past few days, no? Or the past day. And so yung mga na-test naman na positive, mga 2 weeks ago na nahawa or less. So more or less you can calculate that things may be settling down again. So na-extended tayo hanggang Sunday, no, yung ECQ.
ECQ po. Pero kasi sa naman po, sa DOH, ang sabi naman sa DOH as of April 5, in terms of R0, yung R0 po is yung yung
rate of
transmissibility niya. Ang R0 as of April 5 is 1.2.
Bumaba pa lalo kasi 1 previously, di ba?
Mataas previously pero ngayon medyo bumababa. Ang lang natin po is talagang bumaba siya kasi ang ideal sa R0 is supposedly below 1. As much as possible 1 or below 1. Sana umabot na doon before pa mag-Sunday. Para po ang ECQ natin i-lift at maging MECQ or mawala na po yung ECQ.
Well, sana huli na yung linggong darating na ECQ.
Opo, sana
Kasi
nga
may
po.
bali-balita, i-extend to end of April. Napakahirap nun. Napakaraming naghihirap po na walang trabaho ngayon. That is really a serious crisis sa atin ngayon, yung economic crisis. So
No,
let's
yung
hope.
it's crippling our economy nga po
That's
at
right.
saka our country as well. So pero Kamentong, maano ko lang po, mabangkit ko lang po. Though may ganun po tayong cases, no, medyo umaabot tayo ng 6,414 today. Kung titignan nyo naman po ang breakdown para lang magkaroon tayo ng parang magandang ano na rin, no, perspective, is ang asymptomatic and mild cases po natin is 98.7. Ang ating
Wow.
fatality rate as of today is still below still below 2%, which is maganda naman po kahit papaano. Below 2% pa rin. Tapos ang critical cases natin is 0.5%, ang severe is 0.5%, ang moderate natin is 0.30. So those are silver linings. Kaya lang syempre, ang problema kasi kapag tumataas ang cases, especially active cases, is yung isolation centers and hospitals. Kasi kahit hindi masyadong severe, syempre natatakot ang tao pumupunta sa hospital. So yun yung kailangan sigurong tignan natin na kailangan talagang bumaba din yung cases natin.
Well, magandang balita, no? Yung mild and asymptomatic, 90 ilan?
98.7% po.
So, but talagang yung kapitbahay ko dito sa kanan, talagang kapitbahay, may kaso. So, lockdown sila. Nung 2 weeks ago, yung harap naman namin na bahay, lockdown sila. Kasi may 2 kaso. But so far, I'm okay. And I'm looking for something to show you. Kasi tinapon ko lang dito sa loob. Na yung drawer ko. Ayun, nakita ko. Well, may test kit ako sa bahay. Dito lang 1 inch sa nose. Hindi na pinapasok sa loob.
Hindi pinapasok sa loob.
At hindi saliva test. Kasi yung saliva test is less reliable. Kasi yung saliva nagbabago eh. Nag-test po ako and yun, ito po, negative na naman ako. May second test, April 7. So, 2 weeks ago, nag-test ako, negative. Kaya nag-test ako ngayon, may isang box kami ng 25. Pinadala ko na sa ibang mga nag-test ng mga pamilya. Bumalik na sa akin ngayon ulit. Nag-test ako, negative ulit. Kasi yung anak mo nagrereklamo, yung kaisa-isang anak na nakatira sa amin. Nagrereklamo, ubo daw ako ng ubo, baka may COVID ako. So nag-test, negative na naman. But again, kahit na negative o kahit positive, it's never 100% sure. Unless you test it twice, 3 times, 2 out of 3. Kasi yung isang kapatid ko nag-test ng positive. So, syempre, nag-aalala, mag-test ulit nung PCR test, yung hanggang doon sa likod, no? Yung dulo, negative. So, ano ba talaga? Now, the doctors are treating him, pero pneumonia daw. Pero, they're treating him as COVID-19 case para sigurado. You see how difficult it is? Hindi yung simple, hindi, kumpirmado yan, hindi, negative yan. Sierra, pneumonia ang treatment nila na nagsimula daw sa COVID-19. So it's
kaya nga po, just to ano lang, no, to give an input. Kaya nga po sa DOH, na I'm just trying to explain na sa DOH, if you look at it, may tinatawag silang validation. Lahat ng natitest, the first time sinasabing positive, lahat yun binabalidate actually para masiguro talaga kung kung tama nga ang reading ng result, no? So sometimes kaya minsan may delayed na reporting sila tapos nai-imbak sa isang araw. Katulad nung last time na ilan yun? Na more than 10,000 ata? Na-imbak yun na
nag-treat ng 15.
Oo, na-imbak kasi. Yung iba doon, previews na hindi na-report. So may ganun po na lag minsan. Kasi sa validation din siya nangyayari.
Okay, maraming dumating na po at kasali natin at I think may debate pa dito sa isa.
Maganda yun, nagdidebate sila.
And dito rin sa kabila. We'll take note of them in a while. So anyway, that's good news from 19% dati ang increase ng weekly increase bumaba na to 3%, and sana very soon down
Mas
to 1,
bumaba
and
pa po.
maybe
Oo.
lalong bumaba pa. Ano?
Mm.
Okay, let's move on. Now, today, ang dami ng news. Aprobado na ng ating vaccine panel, including FDA yan lahat. No? Kung na ang Sinovac endorses Sinovac. Vaccine panel endorses Sinovac COVID-19 vaccine for elderly amid AstraZeneca shortage. So, in fact, I don't know kung napanood nyo at napanood mo kaanad yung appearance ni Navotas or Malabon Mayor. Navotas ang
Yeah.
alam ko.
Oo.
Kasi, at Pitiangco.
Oo.
Ano sabi doon?
Wala daw siyang choice, kaya Sinovac na lang daw ang ano niya, kasi kahit na daw may skirmish ngayon sa South China Sea. Sabi ko, bakit, ang ano ko lang, I just want to put my comment, no? I respect his opinion, no? As a politician, as a person. Pero why do you have to put, alam mo yun, to lump two different issues? No, yun minsan na ano ako kasi you don't really need to relate the two because the two are two different things. This is vaccine and this is a dispute in the South China Sea which has been there for a long time. Wala pang pandemic, nandiyan yung issue. So parang hindi maganda na ilalamp mo or pagsamahin mo yung dalawa. Pero of course, we don't, politicians are politicians at the end of the day. So,
Talagang hindi
pero
maganda.
I respect his whatever statement that is.
Si Toby Tiangco is a family friend. No? Lalo-lalo na yung family ng kuya ko na nasa fishing industry. And sila Toby are also in the fishing industry. Nabotas family din yan. So family friend. Pero nababawasan ang respeto ko talaga sa kanya pag siya ay pumapapil na ganyan. Hypocrite talaga. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. Huwag na siyang mag-Sinovac. Anyway, mayaman naman siya. Pwede siyang lumipad sa Singapore or Europe. Multi-millionaire, if not billionaire ang pamilya po niya. No? So, doon na siya. Lumipad siya. Magpasaksak siya ng Pfizer na sinabi niya gusto niya Pfizer. Pero pumapel.
But mayroon pa po akong example. Look at I mean, I'm not for any politician, no, but just to have a comparison. Si Mayor Isko also had was vaccinated. Sinovac. Wala naman siyang sinabing anything more than that. No? Sabi lang niya, I was vaccinated by Sinovac and that's it. And yun lang, na parang encourage other people to be vaccinated. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a supporter of either of any politician at all. Isa lang sinusuportahan ko politician, ang ating Pangulo lang. Other than that, wala. So what I'm saying is, there's a difference. No? Yung makikita mo yung difference, si Mayor Isko, I was very appreciative na nagpaturok siya at end of the issue. Nagpaturok ako, tapos. Diba? Yan lang.
Now, sabi ko nga dito sa aking comment na nalagay dyan sa kumpirmado na, Sinovac, aprobado na sa mga elderly. Kasi meron pa akong susunod na image yan. I think nandyan na. Ilagay na natin. Yun yung pinadala mo sa akin na Sinovac.
Oo. Kasi sinusubaybayan ko po ang mga vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine, yung mga reports nila po.
Okay, anyway, basahin mo lang yung mga importante dyan Kaana, since you're the one who sent it to me.
Okay. Sandali kasi maliit ang screen ko.
Mali na.
Ikaw na lang po. Kayo na po. May additional information daw ako para dyan. Pero kayo na po kasi maliit po yung screen ko. Hindi siya masyadong doon ako nagpadala niyan, no? Nabasa ko yan before ako nagpadala. Ikaw na po.
Hindi mo pa rin mabasa? Kasi
ito pa rin,
expand na ni Joshua.
Kayo na po.
Anyway, may trials na to. At may data.
Meron na pa.
At sabi dito, doon sa mga trials at data na lumabas na phase 1 trial, phase 2 trial, basahin na lang natin yung phase 2 trial. Demographic, 350 participants, average age 66.6 years old. And adverse reaction, meron ba? Sabi dito sa ulat, sa trials nila na phase 2, as of January 20, no vaccine-related serious adverse events have been reported. Ano? Antibody response, anong reaksyon ng katawan? Sabi dito, preliminary results show responses to CoronaVac. Yun ang pangalan ng Sinovac vaccine. Ano? So, CoronaVac are not reduced in elderly adults. Ibig sabihin, yung bilang ng antibodies na na-produce ng katawan ng mga may edad ay hindi mas mababa kaysa doon sa antibodies doon sa mga nakakabata. So pareho lang.
Yung 18 to 59 years old.
Yeah. Okay, and then zero conversion rates. Hindi ko na naintindihan yun. Naintindihan mo ba yun? Zero conversion rate?
Ay,
Ano ba
hindi
yun?
ho. Scientific na po masyado yun.
95% after receiving 2 vaccine doses of 3, ano yung UG and 6 UG.
Ay, yung amount ata yan.
Amount yung dose. Pero
yung dose, amount.
I forget the name. Anyway, the rate is similar to that of adults aged 18 to 59 years old. So pareho lang ang
Parehas lang.
dose, no? And so this is Sinovac Biotech performed na randomized double-blind placebo-controlled phases 1 and 2 clinical trials of CoronaVac in healthy adults aged 60 years and above in Wenqiu City, North China's Hebei province. Sinabmit na po ito sa ano tawag dito, sa FDA and CDC nila, I'm sure. Okay, and so ang comment ko po dyan, matapos ng lahat ng pandalait sa Chinese vaccines, doon din ang punta. Doon din ang punta nila. Kasi the Chinese vaccines are being produced in enough quantities, and lahat ng pangako ng Western companies, wala tayong nakitang na puno na delivery. Ang pinagmamalaki last January, hindi ba nilalait din nila si Duque kasi bakit pinipigilan ni Duque ang Pfizer, Moderna? What month was that? I think before 2020 pa nga eh, no?
2020 pa po yun. Last quarter of 2020.
Tapos si Ambassador Babes Romualdez ng Pilipinas sa Washington ang siyang nagtutulak. Do you remember that also?
Opo.
Ay hanggang ngayon, Abril na, wala pang makitang anino ng Pfizer dito at Moderna. Noon pa natin sinasabi kaana na halos hindi ako makapaniwala na makaka-deliver talaga. Kasi 70 degrees centigrade minus, no? Ang temperature.
Parang lamig ng North and South Pole yan.
Kaya nga.
Ganon yan eh.
Ang mga cold storage natin dito, 20 degrees centigrade, the regular cold storage, no? And they have to put up special cold storage to bring in Pfizer. Yung Moderna siguro mas madaling i-transport.
Mas lower ng konti.
20 degrees lang na daw. So, ayan.
Pero, just to add po, kasi add ko lang po, Indonesia approved Sinovac COVID-19 vaccine for use on the elderly after receiving clinical trial results from China and Brazil in the end of January 21. Kasi ang clinical trial din for the elderly, dalawa, sa China at saka sa Brazil. So the clinical trial showed no reports of serious side effects on the use of vaccine according to the head of Indonesian Food and Drug Regulator. Kasi pinagamit na sa Indonesia right now. The first and second phase of clinical trials of the shot in China that involved 400 elderly people showed good results of increased amount of antibodies. Sabi nung yung head, parang si Domingo dito sa atin, yung counterpart niya sa Indonesia, yun ang sabi. Tapos po, ang phase 2 and phase 1 trial ng Sinovac was actually published in Lancet Medical Journal just last Wednesday. I don't know the Wednesday kasi basta it was published in Lancet. It was first report of an inactivated kasi ang Sinovac na
inactivated virus.
Oo. So, nakapublish na sa Lancet po ito. Yung isa sa pinaka-popular and well-known na medical journal na yun nga, yung mga phase 2 and phase 1 and phase 2 trial. I think the phase 3 is ongoing. For phase 3, specifically for elderly population po. So yun. Sa Indonesia gamit na siya. I think other countries as well. Yun nga sabi, 'di ba? 11 countries. And in China actually, they're using it as well. Oo, parang ganun na yung nangyayari. Pero pero may caveat po na nakalagay. Parang sinasabi, still you need to consult, your doctors. It's much more a personal The doctor has
Kasi
yung
i-evaluate ng doktor kahit na pwede na sa elderly. Anong kondisyon ng elderly na pasyente?
Opo.
Meron ka bang autoimmune problem, disease? Hindi ka tuturukan. Ano yung autoimmune problem? Yung mga tulad nung naging sakit ni Marcos, ano ba yun?
Lupus?
Lupus. Yung may
lupus.
pwedeng sa
Lupus, no? Tama.
Lupus. Mga ganyan. No? So, each patient will have to be evaluated. Ako, nag-fill up na ako ng mga questionnaire ng Pasig City
Okay.
para no? So, nakita ko lahat ng mga kondisyon na hindi po pwede. Mukhang pasado naman ako. Yun lang, yung unang balita ko, AstraZeneca. Ayaw ko ng AstraZeneca. Maraming question about blood clots. Although, pwede pa rin, ano? Pero, kung may Sinovac naman, bakit pa ako maghahanap ng iba? And alam ng mga taga-subaybay ng programa natin at mga articles natin, way back last year pa, I've been rooting for the inactivated virus dahil that technology is 200 years old.
Proven na siya, yung technology.
Okay, and so yan ang mga good news about the vaccines and
one last good news po. Pero good news siya for the world, but I think not dito sa Pilipinas wala pa tayo. Ang China, yung Sinopharm po was just this Saturday na COVID vaccine produced of course by the Chinese, no, by Beijing Institute. Parang na siya po, has been issued a good manufacturing practice certificate by Hungarian authorities, making the first for a Chinese COVID-19 vaccine receiving a certificate from EU country. Pero Sinopharm po yan. Wala po tayo dito ng Sinopharm. Sinovac po tayo.
Sinopharm also uses the old technology. Ang tawag doon, hindi inactivated, kundi attenuated virus vaccine. I don't know the difference between the two, pero lumang technology din yan. So it's at least more understood and better understood at walang unknowns. No? Okay. Let me see, what is our next item? Kung tama ba ang aking sequencing? Kasi kung minsan So Sinovac for the Sinovac chart, and then ang next item is really this again. Medyo kilala ko rin itong congressman na to.
Alam ko na, si Rufus Rodriguez.
Si Rufus Rodriguez.
Nakita ko kasi yung
image na pinadala ko.
Yung image.
Si Rufus, nakilala ko yan when we were both trying to help ERAP. Nakakulong na si ERAP. So I got pretty close. I used to visit him at his house. Pero yun na nga, patalon-talon siya, nag-anti-ERAP din siya nung bumagsak na si ERAP, and so on. Mahusay na politiko. Kalaban ito ni Bonong Adasa doon sa probinsya ni Camiguin, and Misamis. But anyway, that region, political family din yan at kalaban nila Bonong Adasa. And ngayon, I saw yung kanyang statement bilang Deputy Speaker of the House, siya humihiling ng more US patrols in the West Philippine Sea will deter Chinese incursions. Unang-una, ano ba ang incursion? Meron bang incursion? Yung mga fishing boats nandoon ng Chino, nandoon ng Vietnamese, nandoon ng Filipino, nandoon ng Taiwanese, ang Malaysians. Walang mga incursions dyan kasi lahat nag-claim ng mga areas na yan. At number 2, traditional fishing grounds lahat yan, even UNCLOS accepts that. Number 3, EEZ ng Pilipinas, nagke-claim nga ng territory ang Vietnam at China. At ang Malaysia. Malaysia also claims territory there. And of course, when you have territory, you have EEZ also. Kaya isang paliwanag ko that a lot of people like, sabi ko, ang attitude ng lahat ng bansa dyan, live and let live. Ano? Wag mag-away, pabayaan mo yung mga nandiyan na, walang magbabago, ano? At peace lang, di ba? Ganyan. Pero the reality is today, ang Pilipinas, for one reason or another, which we'll analyze later on, ang siyang nagkuudyok di ba? Nagtutulak sa laban sa China. Bakit hindi din sa Vietnam? Bakit hindi sa Taiwan? Bakit hindi sa Malaysia? Di ba? So selectivity and double standard. Pero we know the reason there, no? Lalo na yung mga taga-subaybay natin na matagal ng mas aware, no? Ito ay ginagawa na political propaganda laban sa China at pahaging laban kay Duterte yan. Ano? Kasi Ana nawala, baka naputol yung kanyang link, she'll be back in a while. Ano? We'll wait for her. Yun, nandiyan na, nakabalik na. Nandiyan na. Ayun, wala ka,
sorry.
Ana. Naputol
Yung
ba ka
internet, my God.
Anyway,
Yung internet parang siya, mahirap na pero talagang hindi magandang internet for several times na po.
We will help you improve it. Ayusin natin yan. So yan ang sabi. And gusto pa niya may mga US patrol. Hindi ba niya alam? I'm sure he understands that will invite trouble. That is not beneficial. Pero
yes.
Sige, Ana, your turn.
No, what I'm saying is, parang napakasimple lang naman yan na parang kung sa game theory, you build scenario. Sa international relations kasi, isa sa mga theory in analyzing situation is game theory. So in game theory, you actually is looking at different scenarios. And then the scenarios will actually calculate kung ano yung magiging effect nun. So that's a very simple situation. Not really simple. Of course, it's very complicated. But if you build scenarios, you will be able to see kung saan tayo as a country magkakaroon ng magiging okay, mas peaceful ka, mas walang stress at saka mas ang national interest natin ang pinopromote. Kasi kapag in-invite mo yan, yung mga halimbawa, naval forces ng US and their allies to actually patrol the South China Sea together with our Navy, it's only one. It gives signal to the other side, to the other party, na sinasabi mo, okay, we're not anymore friends, ha? Ganun yun eh. Kahit sabihin pa natin, ibarubalik pa rin mo yung mundo, i-package mo yan in a very rosy na way. At the end of the day, hindi bobo yung mga nasa kabilang party. They are very wise, they can read things. So, hindi ko sila maintindihan why do they have this kind of insinuations eh. But of course, I understand them, where they're coming from, ano yung affiliations nila. Pero what I'm saying is, alam mo yon, this is a country. This is not just them. This is the whole country that we're talking about. 'Di ba? Parang let's try to look at the whole country, not just certain segments of society. Kasi kung nagka-letse-letse dito sa Pilipinas, sila mayayaman sila. Para kaming mga hampas lupa, saan kami pupunta? 'Di ba? Yun ang medyo naiinis ako sa ganun eh. Kasi imbis na tumulong ka to actually respond to the issue in a way na it can be resolved peacefully, rationally, and all that. May mga insinuations na gano'n, na alam mo naman kung ano yung implications nun. So, mas nakakairita yung gano'n eh. Pero ako, I'm trying to be very, how do you call that? To be very accommodating sa mga ganyang perspective. Kasi naiintindihan ko naman kung bakit sila gano'n. Pero nakakainis lang pag inisip ko as a Filipino na hindi naman ako ganun kayaman sa kanila, simpleng tao lang. Kapag nagkagulo, saan ako tatakbo? Paano yung mga anak ko? Paano yung pamilya ko? Diba? Kasi wala naman akong airplane na sasakyan na didispatch ako sa ibang lugar kaagad eh. Kung ikaw na ba ang nagtitingin, no? Pero of course, I respect their opinion and their perspective, but I don't agree. That's much more the case, I think.
Well, yeah.
Ako, no? Na-stress ako.
I've lost. I can lose respect of people about people, no? Kung paulit-ulit kahit na malinaw na ang paliwanag, no? At i-insist pa. But tulad nung kay Toby Tiangco, talagang I will frankly say I lose respect in this case too. And many of those that are continuing with the big lie na kalaban natin ang China when the fact is China is the one. Pero dumadami na nga, sabi ko sa iyo, that dumadami na yung nakakaintindi ng mabubuting intensyon ng China sa Pilipinas. Ano? Well, we will go on as we discuss these things to show that, to demonstrate that. Ito, natuwa din ako at ikaw, I think you were one of the first to show me this post by posting it and then putting it in my thread, and then si Jamin AG,
kina
yung
Jamin,
RHK 111 Philippine Defense Paid. Natuwa ako kasi na tinurn niya ang table doon sa Max Defense na talagang walang ginawa kundi anti-China lang. So nagulat ako and maganda nga, sabi dito, are the Americans and their Filipino servant dogs trying to sabotage China's vaccine delivery to the Philippines? Yes, I think that is one of the intentions ng mga kampanya dito sa false news, fake news, twisted news, dito sa so-called 220 maritime militia boats na actually fishing boats, na nung nabawasan na to 40, lalo pa silang gumawa ng propaganda na naman, na palalayasin yan, na tupad na nga yung sinabi ng Chinese Embassy na mga fishing boats yan, pagdating ng oras, kakalat na naman yan, mangingisda na. Nung nabawasan na, tsaka gagawa na naman mas malaking issue, lilipad daw ang aeroplano ng Philippine Navy and so on. Kita mo ang manipulasyon ng balita. At walang magawang tama ang Chinese Embassy at ang China. Wala. Para din makalimutan yung 1 milyon, halos 2 milyon buwan-buwan ng Sinovac vaccines na darating buwan-buwan na. Nandyan na. At nandyan lahat ng mga konkretong ebidensya na inaprubahan na sa elderly kasi nga wala ng ibang mabigay na vaccine. And not because dahil wala lang, kundi talagang nagpaturok na ang 71-year-old president of Turkey, si Erdogan, ang Sinovac. Ang 60-year-old, a few months lang, na presidente ng Indonesia, si Widodo.
Si Widodo.
Mga 6 o 7 na yan na mga senior citizens ng mga presidente, prime minister ng ibang bansa na nagpaturok na ng Sinovac. But hinintay nila yung iba muna bago maaprubahan ang Sinovac for the elderly dito. So, lahat ng pabor binigay na sa Western medicine, di ba? O sige, tigilan namin ng Sinovac. Wala din. So, Sinovac na yun. Pero talagang kasama sa tingin ko sa masamang motibasyon ng mga naninira ng Philippine-China relation. Itong pagsapaw ng mga balita na maganda about Duterte's work with China and this cooperation. Tuloy ko lang yung pagbasa nito. As I had posted, what's the name of the one managing the RHK 111 Philippine Defense Page? Nakita
Di ko rin kilala po. Di ko kilala, pero di ko kilala po. Pero tawag nito, in-invite nila ako to be part of the group.
Okay. Talagang popular ka, iniimbita ka. Ako, tagal-tagal ko na, hindi ako iniimbita. Anyway, sabi niya, as I had posted about recently, China so far has been the Philippines' main and most reliable source of vaccines for the coronavirus disease 2019, sending 2 million CoronaVac doses in 3 deliveries so far. Yan po ay buwan-buwan po, 2 million. But they will fill the order of 25 million by December. So the only other vaccine that has arrived is AstraZeneca and ubus na naman.
Naka-problema tayo.
So ayan po, I think you posted this also, no?
Opo. And shanare ko po siya kasi yun nga, yung mga organizer niyan is they're kind of friends now with me kasi they invited me to be part of the group. So okay, friends.
Did you join na?
Oo, member na po ako ng group nila.
Kaya napo-post mo sa amin na nakikita
namin. Oo, nasi-share ko sa inyo yung post nila.
Nasi-share. Thank you. Because this is very important. Um, let's move
Pero
on.
ang ano po,
Go ahead.
ang pinaka-importante po, Kamentong, is nagsalita na ang presidente last Tuesday, not yesterday. Ang sabi niya, we will continue to resolve our differences with China. Kasi like any other country naman, may differences talaga. Hindi naman yan na lahat okay. May differences. So sabi nga ni PRRD, we will continue to resolve our differences with China through diplomatic channels in a peaceful, in a peaceful and diplomatic way. But ibig sabihin lang, at saka sinasabi rin niya, yung nangyayari sa South China Sea right now, kung mayroong mga standoff dyan or skirmish man dyan involving the two countries, that will not be a factor para hindi magkaroon ng malalim na pagkakaibigan or pagkakaibigan for that matter, ang dalawang bansa. Yun, nilinaw na yun ng presidente. So, nagsalita na ang presidente. So, I think, if we really want to move on as a country, kasi ang dami nating problema, andyan ang COVID-19, andyan yung poverty level natin, ang development need natin, ang dami-dami, no? We just have to focus on what matters now. What is kumbaga anong immediate ngayon, yun yung tignan natin kasi pag hindi natin yun na-resolve, kawawa din tayo. Kasi makipag-away ka man dyan sa South China Sea, kung wala ka nang kakainin dito sa loob ng bansa mo dahil hindi mo maayos-ayos ang problema mo, wala din yan. That doesn't matter at all. Kailangan mong palakasin yung bansa mo economically kasi everything revolves around the economy. So yun yung mas pa ako So huwag na nating i-politicize yung issue. No, let those people who are in charge and who are tasked officially to do their work, let them work. Tayo, mag-concentrate tayo sa kaya nating i-contribute sa pagpapababa ng kaso ng COVID-19 kasi yun yung pinaka-importante ngayon po. Mas ganun pa po akong tumingin Mas ganun pa po yung pagtingin ko dyan po.
Concentrate tayo sa pagbabalik po ng mga trabaho ng mga mamamayan, pagbabalik po ng sigla ng ekonomiya, pagbabalik po mismo sa bayan natin. And speaking of tourism, swerte tayo na ang Sinovac ang nagiging dominant vaccine dito. Bakit? Kasi tayo talaga ay umaasa sa turista na galing sa China. The biggest group of tourists dapat na sana. And kung Sinovac ang maging popular na vaccine, mas katanggap-tanggap sa China ng mga turista yung na-vaccinate na tayo with the Chinese vaccine. They have, of course, more trust in that. In fact, the Chinese government has announced that those vaccinated with Sinovac or Sinopharm or the Chinese vaccine will be easily accepted to visit China, to travel to China. So, okay, and so these vaccines, of course, is one of the main issue that we will continue to discuss. No? Ito ngayon, next item natin, back to the China Sea and the connection with the vaccines. Naalala mo, Kaana, when si Lorenzana ay parang naguhurmentado na dito sa militia boat issue na I don't agree with, no? Nataranta din ako because sabi ko bakit nung 29th of March naghumuhupa na si Lorenzana at ayaw na nga niya magpadala ng Navy ship dahil sabi niya provocative and so on. Biglang by April 1, sabi ko nga parang April Fool's Day ito, April 1, bumaliktad siya at naging napakasungit niya sa Chinese ambassador and so on. After, diba, we discussed that, sabi ko hindi ko maintindihan ito. Of course, the others are saying, American boy kasi yan, may utos na sa Amerikano. Tense na ang buong yung mga at least aware. Kasi actually, when I look at all the cyber communities ko, Facebook communities, ang big concern pa talaga is COVID-19.
COVID-19
I think small population, percent of the population, 1%, 2%, ang talagang obsessed with South China Sea and so on, West Philippine Sea, yung mga political, yung mga ganyan. But anyway, ang naging theory ko, and I told you that, and I wrote it down, and that's my article nasa Sovereign PH Today lumabas, na mukhang nagsimula nitong fake news na militia boats ang mga amboys at mga Amerikano. Pero by the end of the month, tinake over na ni Duterte para mawala sa control yung issue ng mga tulad nila Carpio at ng mainstream media at inassign niya sa kanyang mga tao sa cabinet na siyang magsalita na tungkol dito. And one of the reasons why I saw this was pumasok si Sal Panelo. Sabi ko si Sal Panelo hindi kontra sa presidente.
Hindi.
And then ngayon nakikita natin si Locsin, itong balita kay Locsin. Sabi ni Locsin, word war on reef better than missiles, says Locsin. Nakangiti pa yung picture ng na umiikot. So that must have been issued by the Department of Foreign Affairs. And kung basahin mo ang message niya, sabi niya, we cannot be children. So anong ibig niya sabihin? We are children. We cannot be children. So that means, mga bata pa tayo. And of course, he's just talking about diplomacy. Okay. In a grown-up world, mature na yung ibang mga bansa dyan. Of course, lalo-lalo na ang China. Lalo-lalo na Estados Unidos. Yung labanan sa geopolitics, matanda na sila dyan. Tayo yung mga children. We and China got to take as good as we dish out to the other. Growing up is called maturation, to be mature. If we were eggs, we'd start to hatch, but some countries are delayed in hatching. Some countries are delayed in hatching. Hindi niya sinasabing China, imposible yan. Pilipinas ang delayed in hatching. Locsin said on Twitter, as he engaged netizens skeptical of the effect of Manila's increasingly strong rhetoric against Beijing's refusal to leave the reef. Well, of course, Beijing will not leave the reef if they don't want to. Meron pang nag-comment sa Facebook na hindi ba mas maganda para kay Beijing, sa China, na umalis na para mapagbigyan niya ang Pilipinas. Hindi ganyan ang diplomacy. You don't give up principle. Baka kung ako nasa shoes ng China, huwag iiwan ako ng isang permanent fishing boat dyan. O sige, tanggalin niyo kami. Kasi hindi din pwedeng tanggapin ng China na sila ay binubuli, natatakutin with overflight ng plane and so on. Superpower yan. Anong ginagawa ng childlike Philippines, no? Yun ang ginagawa. Siyang nang bubuli. Tapos tulad ni Rufus Rodriguez, yung mga Amerikano, halika na kayo.
Ano na si Kaado?
Ayun, magpuputukan na naman ang mga libantador dito. Nag-a-adjust pa si Kaado. Nag-a-adjust pa.
Oo, sige lang.
So,
tuloy niyo po.
So, sinabi na so talagang I think this confirms na ngayon, minamanage na ng mga bata ni Duterte. At I said in my article, so after 1 week, ang headline na naman ay yung Sinovac vaccines dumating na, si Ambassador Juan Sillian makikipag-usap kay Duterte, peace na naman dyan, lilipas na naman yan tulad ng Gemper. Naalala mo yung Gemper last year ba? O 2019?
Opo, 2019.
Yung nabangga yung Filipino fishing boat. No? Talagang kala mo maggegera na. Makaraan ng 1, 2 buwan, humupa na, lumipas na rin. Tawan-tawa ka, Ana, bakit?
Hindi, kasi para siyang parang, hindi, natawa din ako kasi sinakyan yung mga pronouncement ni Secretary Lorenzana at saka ni Secretary Locsin ng DFA, ang One Sambayan. Tapos kung makikita mo sa statement nila, talagang, alam mo yung parang inuunsok nila si Secretary Lorenzana na, alam mo, we're supporting you. Parang ganun ang dating eh. Makikita mo yung insinuation if you read between the lines. Not so much, I think, on Secretary Locsin, but much more on Secretary Lorenzana. Kaya sasabi ko nga, kita mo, sumasakay na tuloy itong mga kabilang uhol. Akala naman kasi nila, sa pagsakay nila, mabibilog nila din yung ulo ng mga tao. At saka parang ini-insinuate talaga nila si Secretary Lorenzana. Kaya medyo natatawa lang ako ng konti na parang, ano ba yan? Kumakay pa. Parang gano'n ang reaction sa utak ko lang ba? So anyway, andito si Kaado. Siguro, marami masasabi si Kaado dito.
Well, I was in touch with Kaado about Lorenzana kasi he's in touch with Lorenzana by text, no? By Viber ata, may grupo sila. So, but anyway, bigyan natin ng kaunting pahinga si Kaado. Kakadrive lang ng galing Quiapo. Kaado, are you ready to say your first words?
Oh yes,
Ayan.
alam mo mahirap to. I heard you saying na minamanage, no? Minamanage ng mga bata ni Duterte.
Hmm.
Ang problema nito, they're standing on very thin ice here.
Hmm.
Because they're not standing on principle. They are standing on politics. And worse, they're standing from parochial politics. And worse, they're standing from the Davao understanding of parochial politics. So paliit ang perception. Ha? Kaya tingin ng mga tao sa mundo ngayon sa Pilipino, mga nitwits, maliliit ang utak. And where does this all start from? From the ambivalence of our position. Wala tayong pinanghahawakang matibay. Ha? Wala tayong pinanghahawakang matibay. Ang China, hindi lamang may pinanghahawakang matibay, kaya pa nilang i-enforce ang will nila, even against the United States, even against the United Kingdom, even against the NATO forces. They can at will enforce whatever they want to do. And at best, the Chinese principles are well established, they are transparent, they are logical, they are based on traditional and customary international laws. And I would say, FUCK the UNCLOS. Treaty lang yan eh. And the enforcement of the treaty, tatlo yung binibigay ng UNCLOS na enforcement mechanism. One is through the judicial process of the International Court of Justice. The second is through ITLOS, the International Tribunal for the Laws of the Seas 4. Compulsory arbitration. And the third, doon tayo pumapasok. Bipartisan or multilateral arbitration, private arbitration. Ngayon, ang problema dito kasi, pinapasok natin yung mga makikitin na utak natin sa batas. Ano makikitin na utak natin sa batas sa exemplified sa kung gano'ng kalaki ang panga ni Antonio Carpio, gano'ng kaliit ang kanyang utak. He's a big brain. Why? The first thing a Filipino lawyer looks for whenever confronted with a case, alam nila yan, is jurisdiction. Now, how did they establish jurisdiction over China? A private arbitration follows these very simple procedures. Ang mga papasok sa arbitration of parties must agree to enter the arbitration process.
Yes.
Voluntarily. Okay? Number two, they agree to disagree, and they agree that when a decision is made, they will submit themselves to the third opinion of the arbiter. And more than that, they will enforce, the two parties or the parties participating will enforce the decision of the third party. Hindi yung third party mag-enforce. Because this is a private arbitration. And lastly, whatever award, whatever gains, whatever ruling, whatever decision is made will only affect the participating and the participants. It will not have any bearing on law, on any third parties. This is the big hoax that these American lawyers placed Noy Aquino and this stupid Secretary of Foreign Affairs niya. Si
El Rosario.
Albert
ang
Del
pangalan
Rosario.
niyan, lagi ko nakakalimutan kasi insignificant
Albert
talaga
Del Rosario.
Albert Del
ADR.
Rosario. By the way,
Opo.
he's a good friend of mine, but we don't agree in these issues. Albert Del Rosario is one of my best sponsors. Nag-sponsor yan ng Gawad Kalinga project ko. Yung Ambassador Village dito sa Barangay Tatalon sa Araneta. That's why I am not personalizing this. Pinagbigyan ako ni Albert Del Rosario. He just wrote a check. Wala no questions asked. He wrote me a check. Oh, how much is that village? So much thousand. Pumirma siya. $. Oh, here, Ando. Put up the village. And we set it up. But that's besides the point. The point here is Gawad Kalinga has nothing to do with our national interest. And when it comes to the national interest, I will not compromise my principles because I don't speak here just for myself, but for 109 million more Filipinos that will be disadvantaged by whatever lie or prevarication or whatever kalokohan papasok nila dyan.
Okay.
So yan ang rules of engagement ng private arbitration. Now, simple, hindi nag-participate ang China. So everything in the PCA will only involve the Philippines. And the Philippines is the only party that will enforce. Now, the US na ngayon na nag-i-invoke ng Mutual Defense Treaty. Mga gago talaga, mga supot yan mga kano na yan. These uncircumcised heathens who calls themselves Christians. They're not. You know, grabe. Ang agenda lang ng PCA iisa. Nilur nila ang Noynoy Aquino administration into it. What did we gain from it? Wala. In fact, yung claims natin sa Kalayaan Islands, Ana, do you realize na yung claims natin sa Kalayaan Islands and Bubi Tiglao and I agree on this?
Yes.
Na-diminish pa?
Na-weekend siya.
Dahil tinawag itong mga inoccupy natin ng mga rocks. And rocks are not subject to territorial sovereignty.
Yes.
They do not produce exclusive economic zones. Very clear. Lahat kasi ng mga bobong na bobola nila dyan, unang-una, hindi binasa ang UNCLOS. Pangalawa, they just relied on Carpio because Carpio, ganyan ang mga Pilipino Depende kung sino nagsasalita, Associate Justice of the Supreme Court ito. Hindi naman siya sabi ni Carpio na binayaran yung opinion niya. So, hindi nila binasa ang UNCLOS. Pangalawa, hindi nila binasa ang PCA ruling. Tapos sasali sila sa debate. Katulad niya si Richard Hungarian na yan, hungry for publicity. Balita ko, pinasok na raw ang ASEAN Post. Anyway, so, yan ang punot dulo Basahin muna ninyo ang treaty, ang UNCLOS. Basahin muna ninyo ang PCA ruling. Dahil ang natalo lamang sa PCA ruling na yan, ay ang Amerika dahil doon sa portion invalidating the 9-dash line. But it does not have any juridical value because that decision is only for the sole participant. Now, paano nila pinapasok ang China dyan? Nung mag-opt out ang China, nagpetition sila sa UN. Gumawa sila ng, gano'n, di ba? Katulad ng mga ginagawa ng mga red flag victims. Ha? Yung mga AITA, di ba? Nakafile na sa lower court. Papasok sila sa higher court. Eh, nabisto sila, dinismiss sila. Gano'n ang ginagawa nila. So, nung nag-opt out ang China to make the decision of the PCA appear to have bearing on China even if it is not a participant, common sense naman, Ana.
Okay.
How can there be an arbitration with only one party?
Okay, Kado,
Precisely.
let me just add, no? All of that you have explained are the correct technical issues and realities na pagdating sa media, which they really use to the hilt, ginamit nilang media, at sangkatutak nga, sabi nga ni Teddy Boy, no? Children dito sa bansa, mga children na nasa inuman, marinig nila si Carpio, di itong patriotic thing to do. Sila ay patriotic daw sila. Toma ng toma. Patriotic, hindi. Kalaban natin ang China. Dumbing down by media. Using, talagang gumawa sila ng lawfare, isang batas, at isang insidente, tapos maiulit-ulit nila sa media, at maraming nabe-brainwash. And hanggang ngayon, marami pa rin. Pero I was telling Kaana that opportunities like this, like their information campaigns every year, is also the opportunities for us to gain new, enlightened, and awakened people by producing the evidence for them to see. Pag nakita nila, andyan yung pinakita ni Kaana na andyan yung 4-story building ng Vietnam doon sa malapit sa Vietnamese doon sa Whitsun Reef, kung saan nakaparada yung mga Chinese boats. Bakit hindi kayo nagrereklamo dito sa kalaki-laking struktura? May K pa, QUAY na paradahan ng mga barko. Yung sa China naman, naka-angkla sila habang nagpapalipas ng panahon. Kung nung nakita nung mga ilan, tulad nung isa sa Viber group namin sa Barrio Capitolio, sinimulan niya nung letter ni Rafi Alunan III na calling for joint patrol because abuso daw ng China and so on. Nung pinasukan ko ng mga ebidensya, galit na siya kay Alunan. Bakit ganyan? Hindi nila pinapaalam sa atin. So we are able to convert them. Pero it really takes time. I always explain na, even to Kaado, tingnan mo hawak nila, Inquirer, Rappler, ABS-CBN, CNN.
Oo, grabe, ang dami.
Tapos tulad ng ASEAN Post, nandun si Ana, nagsusulat, biglang pinasukan na ng marami. Agence France Press, Hedarian, and so on. Dinudumog na yung ASEAN Post, no? So talagang...
Ako na nga atang aalis eh. Ako na lang aalis.
Yan ang nagagawa ng pera. Yan ang nagagawa ng pondo. Tayo, wala naman tayong budget. Only the truth. Sila, daan-daang milyong dolyares ang ginagastos nila. Now, if I may also say so, ang problema dito si Duterte, nung i-announce niya sa UN, I think was not the last UN or whatever, but it was recently. Tama na yung posisyon niya nung una eh. Wala akong desisyon pa. Pero nung nag-desisyon siya as a petty, Davao-based lawyer. Ang concept ni Duterte kasi ng independent foreign policy is based on reciprocity. In friends to everybody, enemy to no one. Bullshit! Sip-sip to everybody ka eh. Wala kang prinsipyo, Mr. President. Sumisip-sip ka sa mga Amerikano dahil ayaw mong guluhin ka ng mga Amerikano. Bakit? Takot ka eh. Dahil ang daming Amerikano. Alam mo ba yan? Because of EDCA and BFA, ang daming Amerikano. Alam mo ba kung saan pinakamaraming Amerikano ngayon, Ana? Nasa
Saan po?
Mindanao.
Sa Mindanao.
Dahil sa
Mindanao.
anti-terrorism insurgent operation.
Anti-terrorism, kalokohan yan. Binabantayan nila yung Cebu Straits para wag natin sarahan yan. Kalokohan yung mga anti-terrorism, kalokohan. Yung mga Jesus Mariosip.
Okay. Okay. So let's move on
So
dito
it's,
sa mga topic.
it is not, I will challenge that in one of my columns. We do not have an independent foreign policy. We have a foreign policy based on reciprocity. Pag hindi na nagbigay ng tulay, pag hindi na nagbigay ng bakuna, pag hindi na nagbigay ng loans ang China, it's a puwero na yan kay Duterte. Huh? He will kiss the ass of the Americans.
Well,
It's a mendicant foreign policy.
Well, looking at it from a strategic point of view, ang perspective naman ng mga tulad ng China na mature powers, they have a grand plan for the region and for the world. Yung nakalagay naman doon at paulit-ulit kasi sinasabi, community of shared future for mankind. Whoever is the president of the Philippines, even if it's anti-China for the start, ang isang bagong administrasyon, magiging pro-China din yan because of the program of China.
But we are not being pro-China in this recent Wilson issue.
Let me
We
finish.
are being stupid.
I was pointing that out, that even Toxin was subtly pointing that out, that we're very childlike, because na yung dumbing down ng public natin by the media, at we can see naman kung bakit, because they have the control of media or the information production system today. And sabi mo nga, we don't have the giant media outfits or organizations to compete and do the same. But we are able to do what we can do, and with Duterte's maybe to some not completely predictable policy, but nevertheless forging towards independence, and marami naman nagbago na rin from the previous policies of government.
But I'm not talking about that, Kamento. I am talking about, nobody seems to realize here that China deals with us only as far and as good as the public perception of the Philippines is by the Chinese people. The Chinese people will hold the Communist Party accountable for anything that will be derogatory to the Chinese ways.
Yeah, well, anyway.
Pag nangyari yan, at winarningan na nga sila, second warning na. Winarningan na si Duterte, kaya nakialam na si Duterte, natakot.
Saan yung warning na yun? Which warning?
Yung warning na pag hindi kayo tumigil ng pagpapaalis sa amin dito, we will react. We will escalate.
We have that item there. We will move on to that. Hold on. Kasi nakalinya lahat yan.
Okay.
So, itong post naman ni, I think very important, ni Kaana, yung proliferation, yung sobrang pagdadami, yung dumog na sabi ko, ng Vietnamese fishing boats, pati sa ating claimed areas and West Philippine Sea. Ito po ang next image na naihanda natin. And also,
March 21, 2021 yan, March.
Yeah, March 2021, no? So, itong larawan, satellite photo galing sa or image, at least dito satellite photo, di ba? Yung mga green spots niya. Nasa screen ba natin yan? Let me see. Anyway, nilagay na sa screen, no? Ayan, So, ayan, sabi ko nga sa comment ko dito, sa image na to, bakit hindi sinisita ang pagdumog ng Viet fishing boats ang West Philippine Sea? Double standard? Of course, that's a polite question ko lang. Of course, it is double standard. Of course, it is selective reporting. China lang ng China, hindi yung Vietnam. Anyway, Kaana, you posted this also with the RHK 111 Philippine Defense.
Oo,
No?
sila din. Oo.
So,
Actually, they got it from me, I think. No? Tapos they posted
okay.
it there. Oo.
Okay.
Ay, yun, kung titignan mo yun yan sinasabi ko rin, katulad din sa inyo po, na bakit ganon na masyadong selective, masyadong reporting, ang reaction natin, very selective din. Is it because China is a rising power? Kasi kung tutuusin, kung ang pag-uusapan lang po natin is encroach, quote-unquote, meant in our EEZ, eh nag-encroach din sila. Yung mga Vietnamese, yung fishing boat nila, nagkalat dyan sa South China Sea. Also, kung magre-reklamo ka dun sa isa, di magreklamo ka din dito kasi parehas lang naman yan at the end of the day. Pero ang ina-argue ng iba, ang sinasabi nila, ang Vietnamese fishing vessel daw, nangingisda lang at hindi daw nagre-reclaim. Ang Chinese daw, kapag nangingisda, after mangisda, nagre-reclaim. Ang tanong ko sa kanila, tulad ng tanong ni Sir Bobby Tiglao, mayroon kang ebidensya? Kasi yung mga nandun na mga reclaimed areas, matagal na yan 1978, 1988, matagal na yung mga yan. Wala namang bago. Ang nangyari sa Scarborough Shoal, kasalanan ng previous administration yun. Kasi kung hindi sila naging sobrang agresibo, niresolve nila yung diplomatically, probably walang ganon. Ang kaso, mali ang kanilang way of resolving the issue. So, yun. So, ang ano lang doon is, let's be fair. Kung magre-reklamo ka dito, reklamuhan mo rin to. Kasi pare-parehas lang yung pinag-uusapan natin. Nangingisda sila sa teritoryo na inaangkin natin o sinasabi natin easy natin. Para fair, diba? Para walang ito. Kaya yung mga kasi utos ng mga Amerikano, kaya sila ganyan. So, may ganong issue. Kasi totoo din naman, bakit hindi mo ito nire-report? Diba? Yun yung point ko doon. Let's take a look at the bigger picture. No? Kasi hindi lang tayo ang nagki-claim dyan. Maraming claimant yung area na yan. Complicated yan eh. Imagine mo 7 countries, yung Union Bank, I think, is 3 active countries. You have Philippines, China, and Vietnam. Mas active yung dalawa, actually, than us. But still, at the end of the day, disputed yan. Pag sinabi yung disputed, pinag-aagawan, pinag-aawayan pa yan. Wala pa yung resolution.
Well, umiiwas ang
in-explain na ni Kaado kanina yung tribunal, So, hindi ko na kailangan yung balikan.
So, Kaana, I think the proper word is pinag-aagawan, umiiwas na sa pinag-aawayan. Di ba? Umiiwas sa away.
Dapat umiwas tayo doon sa away. Agaw-agaw tayo, pero iwas sa away.
Yung agawan naman, sa salita lang. Diplomatic protest, ganyan, ngaw-ngaw, so ang pinaka mga
World War
ng Pilipinas, kasi nga may nag-uudyok na mag-ingay. Pero yun na nga ang puntos diyan, yung sinasabi mo. We'll go to Kaado. Go ahead.
Nangangatog na kasi ang tuhod ng Amerika dahil malapit na yung Code of Conduct.
Oo, malapit na siya. Actually, nabasa ko sa...
Actually, ang sinasabotahe rito ng Amerika, tinidelay ng Amerika, yung Code of Conduct. Yan ang basa ko rito eh. Wala naman kasing gulo eh. Ba't sila ng gulo? Tsaka pag may gulo, paano mas resolve ng gulo?
Okay.
Gera. Wala namang gusto mag-gera. So, pag-usapan.
Tama.
At saka actually, may resolution na in the sense that yung uulitin ko na ginamit kong salita kanina, there is a live and let live philosophy ngayon sa South China Sea. Andiyan kayo sa siyam na isla, Pilipinas. Kayo, Vietnam, 21 isla doon sa Spratties, hindi kasama ang Paracels. Ang China, 8 isla na ginawa pa nila. Malaysia may claim sa UN laban sa China kasi yung kanilang continental shelf ay abot sa Spratties daw. Sa kanila daw yan.
Kaminton, tanungin kita. Nagre-reklamo ba ang China na inoccupy natin ang Kalayaan Island Group?
Well, meron din silang protest pero hindi kasing ingay natin.
Hindi kasing bangis. They do not object to it on the basis of principle. They object to it on the basis of how sometimes we irresponsibly conduct ourselves in the area. Lalo na yung dynamite fishing na yan. Abay, akalain mo, Monte, alam naman ang lahat ng buong mundo na dinidinamita ng Pilipinas yung Scarborough Shoal. At doon pa sila nagdidinamita sa sanctuary. So it came to a point na tama na, sobra na, tapusin na yan. So that's how we lost control under the Noynoy administration.
Okay. Yeah.
Diba?
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Kaado, on that. Let's move on to the next item, which I want to show several things. Now, one, the diplomatic protocol. Yung escalation should not be cabinet members talking. So, anong response? Of course, the Chinese ambassador and the spokesman of the Chinese embassy in Manila had to respond to Lorenzana. So, sinabi na, they're perplexed. Nagtataka sila, nalilito sila, na perplexed, no? Doon sa mga sinasabi ni Lorenzana na unprofessional, which is true naman, mga salitang wala po sa forma ng diplomasya. Which I think, because hindi mahusay naman talaga si Lorenzana sa diplomatic language, based on my theory, siya ay nasabihan na, sige, katungan mo yan para mawalang atensyon kay Lacarpio at sa inyo ng atensyon, no? Then sumabak nga si Salpanelo, kaya sabi ko, talagang Malacanang na ang nagmamaneho nito. Ano? And then pumasok naman si Locsin ngayon, na sabi niya, hindi, mas mabuti yung ngaw-ngaw kaysa missiles. So kita mo, dinidirect na, china-channel na nila Locsin kung saan papunta yung mga headlines. No? Okay. Whether they're right and wrong about their strategy, I think that is their strategy. Ano? At it works naman in the sense na wala nang atensyon kay Lacarpio, kundi sa kanila na. No? Okay. Now, look at the reaction ng Chinese side. Ano? Embassy nagsagot lang, tapos na. Pero nung nagbabanta na ang mga dito sa Pilipinas, tulad nila Alunan, tulad ng iba na mag-joint US-Philippine Patrol, ang unang mensahe lumabas sa editor ng Global Times. Yung full name niya, I never remember, but ang full niya is Hu.
A strategic analyst siya kasi nakinig po ako nung, it was a video conferencing actually, na mayroon pang ibang mga foreign academics, no, from other countries na dinidiscuss nila yung situation and also the rivalries of US and China. So dun yun kinuha ko.
Okay.
Di ba yung sinabi nila na, ano po yung sinabi nila ulit?
Well, sabi ni Hu, the US has a geopolitical need for the Philippines and China to increase friction in the South China Sea. So, global ang picture niya. Ano? Tapos sabi niya, Hu said, Philippine military officials were acting like puppets. Hindi pa niya sinasabing puppets, no, but acting like puppets. So, kita mo, graduated siya. Hindi siya pabigla-bigla. Ano? Hindi accusation kagad. Calculation siya. Measured, very measured siya. Acting like puppets of the United States. The Philippine military has many pro-American figures who are cooperating with Washington in this way. And then itong kicker, I would like to warn the Philippine military that it should not act rashly other than making some noise. Otherwise, China will definitely give a strong response. First of all, first of all, it comes from the private sector. Hindi pa from the military. Ano?
Hindi yan from the...
dito, Defense Secretary, pumapasok sa the foreign affairs issue, ina-address ang Chinese ambassador na hindi naman dapat trabaho niya yun. Kita. And yun, babalik ako doon sinabi ni Locsin. Childlike ba yung kanina, but that's the term I use, childlike. Wala tayong idea of what is the right protocol, right procedure.
Mentong.
Yeah, Kado, go ahead.
Between Lorenzana, Locsin, and Babes Romualdez, sino ba ang diplomat dyan?
Tama.
Si Babes Romualdez, PR agency yan ng US Embassy. si Teddy Boy Locsin, Her Majesty Royal Highness yan. MI6 yan. 007. And Lorenzana is military. And Duterte is a lawyer. So, who is really the diplomat? We all know that the president is the chief architect of Philippine foreign policy. Pero alam mo, ang nangyayari dito, pinababayaan na rin sila ng mga career diplomats kasi buwisit na yung mga career diplomats. Mahirap ang usapan that is not based on principles. Mahirap pagka walang definition of terms. Pangatlo, lalong mahirap pagka ang foreign policy ay ambivalent. No? Based only on reciprocity and not on sound doctrine. At China very clear on foreign policy. Shared destiny for the whole mankind. That is why you never see China emphasizing that they already have 3 aircraft carriers. At saka maliliit lang yung mga aircraft carriers. They never brag their military capability. They never brag their force, that they can enforce things through the use of violence. The best and the most aggressive word that I have gotten from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China is active defense. Yung term na yan, is the strongest that I have gotten from the Chinese foreign policy in terms of the use of force.
Okay.
But when it comes to the totality of their persona, international persona, shared destiny for the good of the whole mankind, economic.
Oh, yeah.
Klaro.
Mas economic talaga. Kahit sa mga research ko po, because I'm doing some research actually on it's an international one na research on the economic side, like for example, economy of China, economy of the US, the EU, and even the military side as well. Pero ang makikita mo talaga in terms of priority between China and the US, China is really prioritizing its economy. It wants really to have a very good, tsaka develop talaga. Gusto niya talagang ma-develop yung kanyang country as a whole, no? At saka, kaya nga yung mga projects niya, kung titignan mo, is like yung BIR, yung
Belt and Road Initiative.
Belt and Road Initiative, that's one. Of course, the diplomacy is there as well kasi they want to have good relation with the Silk Road, yung old Silk Road. So ngayon, nagmamanifest na yan actually. Oo, andyan na, gumaganda na yung relationship ng China with the rest of the Middle Eastern countries. Hindi yan nilalathala, pero if you really look at, if you do research, maganda ang relationship ng China because it's much more on economic side, actually. Pero of course, they want to modernize the military, pero in terms of spending, kung titignan mo ang military spending, it's the US still that has a lot of big chunk of their GDP being used for military spending compared to any country in the world.
The US defense budget is still bigger than the next 8 military powers combined.
Yes, oo, totoo yun. Totoo yun. Kahit saan research nila yan.
Go ahead. We'll go a little lighter for a while. I just want to ask Kaado kung nag-dinner na siya. Baka hindi pa siya nag-dinner, kaya galit na galit ang dating niya. Nakapag-dinner ka na ba, Kaado?
Kasi si Kaado eh.
Hindi pa.
Actually, minsan,
hindi pa nga nag-dinner.
galing Quiapo kasi.
Okay, and so let's move on to international issues na, no? Kasi we're so focused on our region. Let's look at the other regions and see that the US is still creating problems in the other parts of the world. Kasi actually, itong next item is about Ukraine. At yung Ukraine, alam natin, if you go back to history, yung Maidan, nagkudeta ang US, laban sa, even-handed Yanukovych, presidente siya na kaibigan ng Russia, kaibigan ng European Union, ayaw ng Amerikano yon. So kinudutan nila, at nilagay nila ang bata nila, nagkaroon ng 2-3 presidente na. Ngayon, isang komedyante ang presidente nila, si Zelensky, na nagpipilit na mag-ayos ng kanyang relasyon din sa Russia. But the NATO, ang USA, tuloy-tuloy joke sa mga so-called Nazi or nationalist elements ng Ukraine, at napaperceive ng Russia na naghahanda na naman sa isang gera doon sa Ukraine. Actually, may movement na ng mga tangke ang Russia to the borders of Crimea, yung area na kanilang binalik sa Russia. And itong balitang ito, from Sputnik, that this is a Russian news website. Moscow is not ruling out military measures in response to missile threats arising from the West. The UK and the US plans to deploy ground-based short and intermediate-range missiles are making the prevention of possible serious escalation much more difficult. The Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman, Maria Zakharova, said itong nakaraang Lunes, April 5, itong report na to. So, tulad ng ginagawa nila sa South China Sea, ang Amerikano, yun din ang ginagawa nila sa Eastern European region. And I just want to bring this up. Maybe you can give your analysis of this. Let's move on to the next one. So the pressure and the struggle, the tug of war continues. Dito naman sa Pacific, Oceania, ito naman ang magandang balita. Australia is pressuring New Zealand to toe the line of Washington. Sabi ko nga sa comment ko, one of the Five Eyes closing as Maori natives turn to cooperation with China. Kasi may Five Eyes. Alam mo na kung anong Five Eyes, Ana? Ana, are you yung five intelligence establishments?
Yes,
ito, cooperate.
ano po ulit yun?
Five Eyes.
Mention
Mata.
natin.
Pero Australia, US, New Zealand, Canada, and UK. Yan ang Five Eyes. In cooperating intelligence networks. Yan. Global yan. Pero ang Australia ayaw na masyadong mag-cooperate. Kaya nagreklamo ang Australia at pinipresyo ng Australia. Sabi ng isang Australian news media outlet, news.com.au, reported on Saturday, quote, there are concerns from New Zealand's Five Eyes allies that it may be the weak link in dealing with China as the Ardern yung prime minister nila ngayon, yung babae doon sa gitna, again failed to call out Beijing. Ayaw magreklamo ang New Zealand tungkol sa Beijing sa Xinjiang issue, yung mga forced labor na ayaw, tahimik siya. For another reason, bakit ganyan na ang posisyon ng New Zealand? Aside from the economic reasons, nakikita naman nila yung boycott ng China ng coal, steel, barley ng Australia. Ayaw nila mangyari sa kanila. But there is another reason we don't normally see. Yung pala, ang New Zealand Parliament, dumadami na ang natives na representante, na Maoris. Sabi nito, for another reason, in comparison to the US and Australia, where the white mainly determines their foreign policy, the Maori today have occupied a considerable position in politics. Therefore, Wellington is Australia. Wellington is New Zealand. Therefore,
New Zealand
policy focuses more on domestic affairs and tends to be more pragmatic. Hindi lang sinabi dito, tends to be more pragmatic with China. So that's the Western alliances are slowly weakening, pero nagpapakita sila ng tapang by sending warships dito, aircraft carrier, missile deployments sa Ukraine, and so on. So I wanted to give our audience a perspective on this. Let me move on to the next one so we can clump together all these. Meanwhile, ang China naman continues with its positive diplomacy to debunk the propaganda ng Estados Unidos. Now, this is an important development. April 3 lang ito. Foreign diplomats from 30 countries, visit a resident in the town of Kashgar, sa Xinjiang, ano? March 31 to March 8 to April 2, ano? March 30 to April 2, ano? Delegation comprising Vladimir Norov, Secretary General of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and more than 30 diplomats, not 30 countries, 30 diplomats from some 21 countries visited Xinjiang, no?
Xinjiang.
So, and this is just one of the many statistics there. From 2014 to 2019, the GDP of Xinjiang increased from 919.59 billion yan, almost a trillion, yuan to 1.6 trillion yuan.
Trillion.
Trillion, with an average annual growth rate of 7.2%. Tayo, 6.5% lang the last time we had the growth statistic. Under the current standards, 3.6 million rural residents in the region have been lifted out of poverty. 3,666 poverty-stricken villages have withdrawn from poverty list, and all 35 poverty-stricken counties are now off the poverty list. Yan po, and 3 items. Anything you want to comment? I'll just summarize for you. Moscow not rolling out military measures in response to missile threats arising from the West. Australia pressures New Zealand to toe the line of Washington. And of course, the next one is foreign diplomats debunk the lies about Xinjiang. Any reaction? Si Kaado, baka inaantok na or sa gutom napipikit na. Ana, your reaction.
Doon po sa doon sa Sputnik na news, nabasa ko po 'yun. Actually, sa Facebook page pa ni President Vladimir Putin. If I'm not mistaken, ang sinasabi nila na Russia will not be parang hindi kampante ang Russia or not taking things complacently. Kasi kung mag-act daw ang NATO together with the US militarily, nandun sila. Parang sinasabi nila na we will be here, we will not let it happen. So parang kung titignan niyo po, may nangyayari dito sa atin, sa region natin, nangyayari din sa Europe, parehas yan provocations yan mga provocations yan. So pag nagkataon, sis Maria Joseph, wag naman po sana. Kasi ang labanan po ngayon, hindi na conventional warfare, nuclear warfare na po. At doon nga po sa pinanood ko kasi yung sinasabi niyo sa GTN na discussion ng mga academics on geopolitics. Ang sinasabi nga ng isang expert sa geopolitics na from other country, I think from a Western country, yung sinasabi nga niya, China has, and the US and even the Russia, they have the capacity for mutual destruction. Ibig sabihin, pag mag-first strike ang isang country, may second strike, mutual destruction yan. Kasi ang binabala mo dyan is nuclear weapon. So yun ang sinasabi. Pero ang sinasabi, sana wag ganun ang mangyari. Sana countries will cooperate because there are issues na pwede naman mag-cooperate. And one issue that actually country can come together and work things out is yung tinatawag mong environmental crisis na meron tayo, yung climate change. So why not focus on climate change? Yun ang sinasabi ng isang expert, and work together. Kasi yun, common enemy ng buong mundo yun. Yun ang sinasabi niya. Which I agree actually, no? Kasi common enemy naman talaga ng lahat ng climate change. So mas gano'n pa. Doon naman po sa New Zealand, just to be quick, actually, marami ng countries ang ganon. Hindi lang nare-report. Even countries in the Middle East, like for example, Saudi Arabia, if they read the report of Saudi Arabia, when the foreign minister of China visited, what did they say? Yung countries ng Middle Eastern, we support China to protect its domestic interests. Na we do support that. Kasi ano ang ginagawa ng strategy ng China, which hindi naiintindihan ng mga tao actually, is they want countries to have yung sinasabi na independent foreign policy. Pero depende siguro yan kung paano mo dinidefine yung independent foreign policy. Pero yun ang strategy na walang kinikilingan yung mga countries. They just, do business. Pero sa Middle Eastern country, they're very supportive actually of China. Na ang China has its sovereignty. It is sovereign in its issues. Huwag makialam ang outside countries kahit sino pa. nagsalita ang mga leaders ng ng Middle Eastern countries. So,
Yeah.
kung titignan mo po ang mundo, nagbabago. May mga pagbabago. Talagang makikita mo yung hindi naman dominance in a negative way, pero yung pag-angat talaga ng China, it's something
Yeah.
that we cannot ignore. It's really happening. So I think as a country, we need to be very pragmatic like New Zealand. We have to be very pragmatic kasi may iwan tayo. Kaya sabi ko nga dyan, we will be caught flat-footed in the changing Indo-Pacific power structure. Now, if the Philippines don't want to happen, then you need to be pragmatic. You need to play smart and wise.
Okay.
Yun yung mas ko pa.
Yeah, and may I add, Ana and Kaado, and for everybody, kaya tanggap na tanggap ng mga, kahit na nag-aaway ng mga bansa, Iran and Saudi Arabia and Israel, ang China. Kasi anong prinsipyo nakakatulong sa China? Non-interference. Lagi siyang may dalang, parang sabihin natin, sorpresa. Roads, bridges, projects, support for finance. May dala siya lagi. Pero hindi siya nakikialam sa loob ng...
Nakikialam sa
hindi siya sa politika ng sariling bansa niyo.
Domestic politics.
Saudi Arabia. So, Saudi Arabia, nakikialam ang Amerika doon. Kasi nga, yung kanilang mamamatay tao, yung kanilang hari, si Salman, Pero China, tahimik lang. Ayusin ninyong sarili niyo. Wala kaming pakialam dyan. Basta ito, tulong namin. Kayo makakatulong sa amin. Ganyan din sa Iran. Kakapirma lang ng Iran-China deal, 25-year strategic deal na 400 to 600 billion dollars worth, and so on. So, ganyan din naman sa Pilipinas. Wala kang makikitang negatibo sa China tungkol sa Pilipinas, tungkol kay Duterte. Kahit sa oposisyon, tahimik lang sila. Yung ngayon lang, yung
hindi sila kikialam
nila, yung Global Times, editor nila nagsabi tungkol sa military, American boys sa military natin. Kado, that's our last 3 items.
That's the last items, I think. Opo.
Well,
Opo, Kado.
konti lang dagdag doon sa sinabi ni Akna. Actually, there is existing the TAN, or equality of forces between the US and between Russia and NATO. Bakit ko sinabing between Russia and NATO? Because ang NATO, noong 2014, especially the US, tinigil na yung MIRV, yung multiple warhead. And each warhead capable of not just reaching separate destinations, but can change destinations as ordered or as amended from ground control. Tinigil ng Amerika yan, ang MIRV development. Pero ang Russia, tinuloy niya yan. Ang China, ang missile, both not just intercontinental ballistics, but inter-regional ballistics, is based on MIRV. And their MIRV capable of up to 10 warheads na, 10 MIRVs. Now, lamang ang Amerika pagdating sa launchers. Pero pagdating sa actual delivery, halos pantay na yan. But why are we even talking about this? Because why are we even talking about this when the US has no intentions of using it anyway? Asa na emphasis ng US? 7 naval fleets. Nasa conventional pa rin sila. No? Walang ano. In fact, takot sila. The only country that has the political will to launch a nuclear weapon against any other country is North Korea.
Yes.
Kaya takot sila dyan
North Korea just tested a new missile with MIRV, meaning with multiple warheads, no? Na pwedeng 5 o 10 from one missile, kalat yan at hindi ma-intercept yan kasi
Magsasabog
gumagalaw yan.
Oo.
Gumagalaw yan.
Gumagalaw yan.
Anyway,
So,
Kado,
pangalawa, yung doon lang sa aspect ng economy. Hindi nila inaasahan na when China revives the New Silk Road or the Belt and Road Initiative, na agad-agad maaabot niya Eurasia. Actually, itong activity ng BRI, this is a genius of a plan because through economics, they are able to build their defense.
Yes.
Why? Because they're able to share their wealth with countries that could further their buffer zones. Classic example is Xinjiang. Xinjiang is Eurasia. And now Turkey, Pakistan, Afghanistan, these people ought to realize that if they play the Chinese game, ang timeline nila towards the eradication of poverty in their own areas becomes shorter.
Okay.
China is genuinely in its desire to share economic progress with other countries. The US will never make you prosperous because they are always a colonial power.
Yeah,
They
actually,
always thrive on the weakness of other nations. China wants the strengths of other nations because the strength of other nations develops a bigger market, a bigger consumer.
And buffer zone din nila yun.
At the same time, a buffer zone for defense.
Yes.
Okay, Sado, I just want to go to our viewers, our audience, no? I'll read to acknowledge them, but also maybe select some topics that we can discuss in the next 15 minutes. It's now 8:05 or 8:03, depende sa clock, no? Maybe we'll try to go on until 8:15, 8:20. From nandito si James Moreno, Jolito Argelies, Potsdam and Cairo Declaration ang discuss niya. That's historical, very interesting, but of course we don't have time right now, no? Mahaba may debate tungkol yan. Spain didn't do what France did. May mga discussion sila, mahaba. Ang dami po nito. I don't know, Kevin Bourbon is with us and also part of the discussion, no? Si Jolito, ang haba ng discussion nila. I wish we could discuss it, but we don't have time. From Dan Malyari, from Guam, watching from Guam. Juliet Camaro is also with us. Let me see, Bucci Perlado is also with us. Alexandro Guerrero and Obi Aranza Mendez. Si Abin Aculia Gulo. Magandang gabi from Cotabato City. Listening from Cotabato City. Ramon Tenorio, Julie Borja-Ponce again, our very talented technical man, LT ang George niya, wala pang iisi ang Pilipinas, sabi niya. Maria Lourdes Gabiana Malyari and Freddy Oredina is present. Let me see, Maria Lourdes Malyari, nabanggit ko na ba? Johnny Verenas. Sabi ni Maria Malyari, Lourdes Malyari, Kaado, labas niyo na ang malutong niyong mura. Kaado, narinig ko. Hindi ka pa nagmumura eh. Hindi ka pa nagmumura si Kaado eh.
Medyo walang energy. Galing lang sa Quiapo.
Kana, actually, hindi si Duterte original dyan eh. 2009, sinimulan ko na yan, pagmumura na yan.
Okay. Okay, si Narda Lacuesta, Narda Libing Lacuesta, yun ang buong kanyang name. Okay, and then yung iba, multiple ang kanilang mga comments. Florence Eknerol, team replay ako ng mga maestro at maestra, busy naman kasi sa work kaya nakalimutan na Miyerkules daw ngayon. Okay. So, sabi mo na daw siya. Malu Lewis, what is Samson Run doing in Singapore? Samson. Ay, hindi ko naintindihan.
Baka si Sarah.
Si Sarah. Okay.
Baka kasi nasa Singapore.
Yun, Singapore. Sarah, nagpapa-check up daw. Health
Health
protocol ba?
management.
Health management.
Health management.
Okay. Okay, dito sa kabila, napakarami din po. Meli Valenzuela, nabanggit ko na ba? Sweet potato, nabanggit ko na
Yes,
kanina.
opo. Nabanggit.
Let me go on. Let me see. Deng Dizon, Astro Ayumi, are known for Impelido, watching from Toronto, Canada. Tisoy Roa, Mentong, kaana, mabuhay po kayong tatlo. Always take care and God bless all of us. Julie Merano, Chef Mali, nabanggit ko na ata, no? Emilia Rama, Mahal Likain, blockchain technology, nabanggit na natin. Angel Aliporo, Kamentong, Kaana, and Kaado, we need positive to progress what happens to the Marcos gold. One of these days siguro we can dig into that. Paulo Antonio Pineda, yung isang bayag, sabi niya, ano ba talaga ang programa nila, nationalization, military modernization, or protecting rights of the private sector? Remember, Paglinawan, NPA at Magdalo. Kaloy ventilator, Kaloy J, ventilator, wag naman sana. Hope the ex-president survived this one. Okay, nasa ICU na daw eh. Kung na-ICU, malamang ventilator na, but actually, hindi nabanggit sa latest report. Gavin Elcano, totoo ba na magnanakaw talaga si Erap o isang propaganda item? Sabi nga ni Erap, there is crying money and laughing money. And sa kanya, yung laughing money, kung anumang transaksyon sa politika na masaya lahat, okay yan. Yung issue ng corruption sa gobyerno, talagang very tricky yan. Very tricky yan. Pwedeng, naalala ko nung unang araw kong pagpasok administrator of the Philippine Refugee Processing Center. Nag-ayos ako ng lamesa. First day ko eh. Pagbukas ko ng door, may envelope, ganyan kakapal. Sabi ko sa sekretary ko, ano ito? Sir, I don't know kung bakit may ganyan dyan. O siyempre, alam niya, dumaan yan sa kanya. Sabi ko, ibalik mo na lang yan. You can get money without doing anything. Without rigging any bidding. Akala lang ng mga bidders, makakatulong sa kanila yan. Bibigay sila ng konti. Yung konti nun, ang lalaki nun. Kasi billion naman ang mga pinag-usapan sa gobyerno. Kaya ganyan si Erap at si Gloria. Bilyonaryo si Gloria. Yung tatay ni Gloria, si Diosdado Macapagal. The poor boy from Lubao, pero ends up in Forbes with several houses. Di ba? Because of the vast concentration of money in your power. Komplikadong issue yan, and yung morality niyan, lalong komplikado. Pero you can cite people like Mao Zedong. Nung siya'y namatay, the legend is, and walang nagdi-dispute, $50 lang ang bank account niya. Ang equivalent, of course, yuan yun. Yung kanyang anak, namatay sa Korean War. Kasi hindi niya pinoproteksyonan. Kung ano ang prinsipyo, yun ang sinusunod niya. So, there are endless debates about corruption in government. When one of these days we'll talk about it. We don't have the time today. Kaya I cannot really say corrupt si Erap. Kasi kanina pinento natin si Angelo Reyes bakit nagpakamatay. Kasi hindi na niya matanggi na sabi niya, I walked into corruption. Yun ang salita niya. You may not remember that because I followed it very closely. Kami ni the late attorney Alan Pagia. Okay, Kaloy J, then Arnold Hoson is with us, Jeneline Milante. Maraming issue si Arnold Hoson from UAE. Let's just select one. As observed that Department of Health Duque and FDA Domingo has vested interest. Why are they manipulating the use of several emergency drugs that can cure or delay the spread of COVID? Yeah, that's a good issue to discuss. We should schedule that. Ikaado has his very strong position yan. But by the way, natanggap ko ng unang batch ng ivermectin ko. I have ivermectin in the house. I just have to decide whether I will take it or not. Si Kaado, kailangan ko bigyan ng ivermectin. He is the most active among our group. Kung saan-saan.
Nakakalapin.
Iniisip ko nga na ibilhan ito ng massage chair. Yung mas murang massage chair, hindi yung 100,000. Kasi lagi nagpapamasahe sa labas kasi sa edad niya siguro
Kami itong yung 100,000 na lang.
hindi na ako makaka-afford no, yung mas
Maganda
mura.
yun.
Para hindi na ako lalabas ng bahay.
Okay. Andito si Leon G. Sabi ni Leon, Sir, is it possible na katulad din ng Pinas, may mga trader din sa Chinese military na sumusunod sa US na ignite war in the Pacific? What do you think? There are not, I do not know of the military, but there are civilian Chinese who turn and go to the US and become their propaganda instrument. No? For example, yung column ni Makabenta that past day or two, tungkol sa Sinovac na marami daw, milyon na daw ang napinsala ng Sinovac. Ang kanyang basis ay Epoch Times na news site. Hindi niya alam ba, bilang isang batikang journalist at columnist, Epoch Times is the propaganda arm of the Falun Gong cult, and so on. So maraming ganyan din, Falun Gong.
Sino makabenta? Si Yen?
Si Yen. Talagang nawiwirdan ako kay Yen makabenta.
Hindi na yan ngayon yan eh.
Yang?
Yuan na ngayon yan.
One na. Okay.
Yuan, dollar.
Okay, ito. Ngibit Kuting. Kamentong pakipaliwanag po bakit nandoon yung China sa Hudian Periphery para maisupalpal ko sa mga kaibigan kong mga kultong dilaw. Salamat po. Well, we were discussing that the whole time. But
In fairness, yan, hindi ko maintindihan itong si Yen because during the onset of the COVID-19, isa sa mga prophet of herd immunity, he's reading the wrong books. You know? Maybe he should start ewan ko kasi meron na rin siguro nagbibigay ng libro sa kanya. And I hope it's not Richard Hidarian.
Padala natin yung libro mga. That remind me about that. Anyway, nais ko sanang bigyan ng mahabang paliwanag si Bit Kuting, but maybe we'll do it again next time. And baka narinig mo naman yung mga discussion natin kanina. But maybe one word lang or one phrase to Bit Kuting. Kung bakit nandiyan. Nangingisda lang po yan. At laging pinapaliwanag din ni Ana sa column niya, sa articles niya, na talagang nangingisda yan. At nagkubli lang dito sa mga ilang araw na masamang panahon, ilang linggong masamang panahon. May satellite photo yung masamang panahon, hindi lang nilalabas ng mga ibang media. Ngayon, 4 na po na lang nga nandoon yung huling balita. Baka ngayon, baka 1 dosena na lang nandoon. Kasi diyan naghahanap po ay ang mga yan. Kanina nga pinapaliwanag ko sa diskusyon namin ni Ana, ngayon na nabawasan na, lalong pinapalaki ang issue. Bakit ganyan? Kala ko dahil 220 invasion daw, nabawasan na to 40. We don't know kung 1 dosena o kung meron pang naiiwan dyan. Bakit lalong lumalaki ang mata ni Kaado? Okay.
Tsaka pinaliwanag ni Bobby Tiglao, ni Sir Bobby, na actually sa column ni Sir Bobby, mayroon pa siyang satellite photo na nagka-cast ng net. Hindi, nagka-cast ng net. Oo, kasi fishing eh. Nandun sa isa sa mga kanyang infographics. Actually, kung babalikan niya yung kanyang mga infographics sa 2 article, mayroon doon isa na klarado na nagka-cast ng net.
So si Abelardo Sarsosa, kasama natin Ram 820. Sabi ni Ram, Hidarian is half Iranian. I wonder what his Iranian relatives thinks about him considering the unending sanctions the US, the country is blindly siding with, keeps on imposing on Iran. Well, I'll give you some information.
Mayroon lang ako comment dyan. Hindi ba niya alam na ang Iran at China are very close?
That's right.
Hindi ba niya alam yun?
Because ang tatay ni Richard, ang nanay po ni Richard ay Ilocana, Pilipina. Ang tatay Iranian. Ang Iranian kapanig ng Shah of Iran. Kaya nga lumikas sila galing sa Iran to the Philippines kasi natalo, bumagsak si Shah of Iran. Ano? At dito na lumaki si Hidarian. So anti-Iran government din yan.
Anti-Iran din siya.
Anti-Iran din siya. Si Blooding Bladed, Mabuhay Talk News TV, sabi niya. Well, that's one of the last one in a very, very long line of names natin dito. So we can start closing our discussion. And nangako ako, Kaado, I will prepare yung nasal spray for the first half dozen audience natin every session natin. Just to make it interesting and fun. Yeah, go ahead, Kaado.
Ana, Mentong, na-deliver ko yung libro, ha? Kay Attorney Nani. Oo. At saka, nagpadala na rin ako ng isang libro para kay Trixie Cruz Angeles.
Kay Attorney Trixie, ni-notify ko na po yung friend ko na mag-notify sa kanila. At notify ko rin si Attorney Trixie.
So may dalawang kopya.
Kasi nagre-request sila. Oo.
Okay.
Apo?
May dalawang kopya na si Nick Narit kasi pinadalan ko rin, di ba?
Oo, pero sige lang po kasi mayroon yung pagbibigyan pa na makakasama din nila na mayroon silang gustong aaralin nila yung book.
Good. Kaado, Ana, let's say good night and good day na to our audience.
Apo. Okay. Maraming salamat po sa mga kabansa natin na sumubaybay po sa amin ngayong Wednesday at sana po patuloy po kayo magsubaybay sa amin every Wednesday po. At saka mayroon din programa po sa Sunday ang maestro sa Pilipinas. RP1, ano po yung 8? RP1, 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock po. Ang maestro. At saka sometimes ang maestra ay nasasali na rin. Maraming salamat po.
Kaado, may tanong dito si LT, paano ma-acquire ang book ni Kaado? So we'll just Kaado, your message
Sandali,
naman
kukuha ko ng copy, ha?
Mag-text lang ho kayo sa 0917-336-4366. 0917-336-4366. Ang panghuling pagbati ko lang po ay sa sinabi ni Rizal na ang hindi tumitingin sa pinanggalingan kung matinik ay malalim. Yan po ang implikasyon. Yan po ang implikasyon ng mga foreign policy na hindi sa prinsipyo nakabase, kung hindi sa reciprocity, kung ano lamang makakalkalo, mahihingi. No? So it's about time that we realize that the Filipino is not alone in this world and there is such a thing as traditional and customary international law and ways of doing business, and it's called international diplomacy. Maraming salamat po.
Okay, ako naman ang parting words for this evening. I still believe that President Duterte has taken the right direction, and especially in the foreign policy. Siguro polishing, perfecting it, and he has to live with the Philippine political culture na malikot, yung very immature pa rin, ang marami, at yung control ng mga dilawan at ng Amerikano ng media natin.
Nandun pa rin.
Hamon talaga yan. So we also, of course, appreciate the vitality ni Kaado at independence niya. So we will always balance all this for the betterment of our nation. Maraming salamat sa ating mga libo-libong kasi yung huling diskusyon natin, 3,500 in the first few hours lang ang nanood sa atin, And so we hope we have some impact sa national discussion po natin. Kasi dapat iwanan na natin yung diskusyon na dati kontrolado ng Doppler, Inquirer, ABS-CBN, and so on. At tayo naman po ay makapaghayag ng buong katotohanan. Maraming salamat po, and until next Saturday and next Wednesday, and of course this Sunday, dito sa RP1. I will see you again. Mag-ingat po tayo lahat, and so far, nag-survive na tayo without COVID-19. Let's keep it that way. Maraming